Hey, I'm Tyson from Tooz and T, at it once again with some music talk. Today we're putting guitars back in the spotlight, talking capos and alternate tunings. Let's dig in. So in our first guitar video, we talked about the absolute basics. The notes of the strings in standard tuning, their relationship to the fretboard and the chromatic scale, and we dropped a quick E major chord in there and talked about altering and extending that chord using other notes from our scale. Guitars are unique in a lot of ways, but one of the things I like most about writing with the guitar is that it's super easy to change the tuning. And when you do, not only does it change the overall sound of the instrument, but it opens up a lot of possibilities to explore in regards to the chords and scales you can play using the same shapes and patterns that you're accustomed to using in standard tuning. Now, there are all kinds of wacky tunings out there. Open tunings, where each string is tuned to the notes of a triad, so you can play a single chord just by strumming all the strings in their open position. There are drop tunings, where you only lower the note on a single string, but all of the other strings stay tuned relative to that note. And then the ones we'll be focusing on today, where you simply raise or lower the tuning of all the strings on your guitar by the same number of intervals. It's worth mentioning here that when a guitar is already in standard tuning, you wouldn't typically tune the strings up by using your tuning pegs, although it is required in some cases to achieve those open tunings. Instead, when we want to tune our strings up from standard, we'll introduce the capo into the mix. So maybe we start there. We know from our first guitar video that when we place our finger at the first fret on our low E string, we are moving that note up one semitone in the chromatic scale from an E to an F. So when we place our capo at the first fret, it covers all those strings at once and moves all those notes up one semitone in their respective positions in the chromatic scale. So where in standard tuning we had E, A, D, G, B, E as the notes for our strings, we now have an F, an A sharp, a D sharp, a G sharp, a C, and an F. And if we make that same E major chord shape we use for standard tuning, it is now actually creating an F major chord. So if we take our capo and we move it to the second fret, we've now moved all our strings up a whole step or a whole tone on the chromatic scale. We now have an F sharp, a B, an E, an A, a C sharp, and an F sharp. Now, when we play that same E major shape, we've moved all those notes up in that chord a whole step in the chromatic scale, and now we're making an F sharp major. So let's take off the capo, recalibrate. We're back in standard tuning, E, A, D, G, B, E, but now we're going to use our tuning pegs and tune down a half step. Okay, now we're tuned down a half step. Our notes are E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B flat, E flat. Or more than likely, your tuner says D sharp, G sharp, C sharp, F sharp, A sharp, D sharp. This is a callback to our inharmonic equivalence, where the flat of one note is the same tone as the sharp of the note that came before it, and a good opportunity to say that in general it's best practice to think of those notes as interchangeable. However, there will be times when it's more appropriate to notate one over the other. So now we're down a half step or one semitone from standard tuning into what is commonly known as E flat standard or D sharp. And you may have guessed by now that by tuning a half step down, when we play that same E major chord shape, we are now playing an E flat major. So let's go down one more half step to D standard. Okay, so now we're one whole step down from standard tuning. We have the notes D, G, C, F, A, D. And when we play that same E major shape from standard, we are now making a D major chord. Pretty cool. But why is it all so important? Well, besides being able to use common chord shapes in an alternate tuning to play other chords you may not have experimented with as much in standard tuning, if you pair those same chord shapes with a chord progression, then you have effectively transposed your song into an entirely new key. Here's an example. Okay, so let's say we're in standard tuning. We're going to do a 1, 4 sus2, power 5 chord progression in the key of E major. So we'll play all our normal chord shapes for these chords, an E major, an A sus2, and a B5. Let's run through that real quick. Now, if we use our capo positioned at the 2nd fret, a whole step up from standard, same shapes, different tuning, we are now playing an F sharp major, a B sus2, and a C sharp 5. Still our 1-4-5 progression, but in the key of F sharp major. And if we play that all again, but are tuned a whole step down, we are now playing a D major, a G sus2, and an A5. Same shapes, same progression, different tuning, new key. It's pretty powerful stuff, but easy to overlook. I can't tell you how many guitar chord charts I've seen that reference an alternate tuning or the use of the capo, but still list the key of the song as if the chords were being played in standard tuning. It's a great way to communicate how something is being played, but all too often the actual chords and the key of the song get lost somewhere in the translation. So, something to be mindful of as you're creating and playing music of your own, but also as you're referencing material from outside sources. And yes, for those of you who have already crunched the numbers, if we started out in D standard, D, G, C, F, A, D, and we put our capo on the 2nd fret position, we are essentially back in standard tuning. All right, well, good a place as any to wrap this up for the day, so I'm out of here. Thanks for hanging. Hope this was informative, and we'll see you again soon.